The glass stretched from floor to ceiling, reflecting the glint of late morning sun on the 52nd floor of the Cross and Whitmore headquarters. Nathaniel Cross stood motionless before it, as fixed on the restless pulse of Manhattan far below. Even from here, he could hear the city's humor, restless, ever-churning machine of ambition, desire, and destruction. At 35, Nathaniel had built an empire valued at over $12 billion. A titan in commercial architecture and corporate development, he was the name whispered in every boardroom and feared in every merger. But behind the pristine suits and boardroom victories was a man locked in winter. 3 years ago, a devastating divorce had stripped away not only a portion of his fortune, but something deeper, his ability to feel. Since then, the only thing colder than his penthouse office was the look in his steel blue eyes. His reflection stared back at him from the glass, a man of calculated perfection. Dark, slicked back hair, a jawline that could cut through steel, custom-tailored Italian suits that cost more than most people's yearly rent. To his employees, he was a legend, an untouchable force of success. But legends, he had learned, didn't bleed, and they certainly didn't feel. The sharp buzz of the intercom interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Cross," said the clipped, no-nonsense voice of Gloria Marshall, his head of HR. "The intern orientation begins in 10 minutes. He didn't respond. Gloria didn't expect him to. Interns came and went like the seasons. Wide-eyed overachievers dreaming of grandeur, quickly disillusioned by the brutal pace and even colder leadership. Nathaniel didn't care. Let them learn. Across the city, a subway train screeched into the Midtown station. Claire Bennett stepped onto the platform, clutching her worn leather portfolio to her chest. She paused for a moment, breath-catching, as she looked up at the towers looming above. Her heart raced not from the train, but from the magnitude of it all. She'd never seen buildings scrape the clouds before. Claire was 22, freshly graduated from Iowa State University with a degree in architectural design. The town she came from, Cedar Ridge, barely had 1,000 people, and yet here she was, standing on the edge of a world she'd only seen in magazines and dreams. The tailored suits, the luxury handbags, the polished leather shoes, none of it matched her own thrift store navy dress, carefully altered with hand stitching to fit just right. Still, she straightened her spine and whispered to herself, "You belong here." Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Claire," he had said before she boarded the bus, "you've got the kind of fire you can't buy with money. That's your worth." The lobby of Cross and Whitmore felt more like a palace than an office. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and a scent that hinted of sandalwood and old money. She stepped inside, joining the cluster of interns waiting near the grand staircase. There were 12 of them, all radiating wealth and confidence. Claire, in her simple pumps and hand-me-down bag, stood out like a dandelion in a bouquet of roses. A woman in a gray pantsuit strode into the room, sharp eyes scanning the group. Gloria Marshall's voice sliced through the chatter like a blade. "Welcome to Cross and Whitmore. You're here because you represent the top 1% of your academic institutions. But let me make one thing clear: talent means nothing without discipline, and discipline means nothing without results." Claire nodded, absorbing every word, while others shifted uncomfortably. "You'll be assigned to departments based on your skill sets," Gloria continued. "Company housing has been arranged. Your supervisors will reach out with specific assignments." When Claire received her badge and assignment card, her hands trembled. 25th floor architectural design department. It was everything she had hoped for. After the exhausting first day of studying schematics and software protocols, Claire rode the elevator to what she thought was the intern changing area on the 30th floor. A cup of coffee had stained her blouse, and she wanted to freshen up before heading to the company's provided apartment. The 30th floor was quiet. Most employees had gone home. She found a room with mirrors and polished tile that looked like it could be a changing room. No signs, no labels, but it seemed private enough. She began unbuttoning her dress, revealing a modest white camisole and her navy skirt underneath. The cooler hit her skin, refreshing. She reached for the fresh blouse in her bag, unaware of the footsteps drawing closer. Nathaniel had work late. As always, the 30th floor housed a few of his private conference rooms. He had returned to retrieve a folder from room C, but as he stepped into the hallway, he noticed a light on an anomaly. The building's security protocols were airtight. No one unauthorized should be here at this hour. He approached the door cautiously and pushed it open without knocking. Time stopped. A young woman stood before the mirror, her auburn hair cascading in loose waves down her back. The soft ivory of her camisole contrasted with the muted lighting, and for a moment, Nathaniel thought he had stepped into a Renaissance painting, something ethereal, pure, utterly unlike anything he had seen in his world of high-stakes deals and ruthless ambition. She turned. Their eyes met. He recognized her immediately, like Claire Bennett, the intern from Cedar Ridge. He'd seen her fall briefly that morning, an outlier, state school, rural background, but now, face to face, there was nothing generic about her. Her brown eyes widened with panic and apology. I'm so sorry, she stammered, reaching for her blouse. I thought this was the changing room. Nathaniel, usually the master of cold composure, found himself momentarily speechless. The changing rooms are on the 15th floor, he said finally, voice low and gruff. I must have confused the floor numbers, she murmured, cheeks burning with embarrassment. It's my first day. First time in a city this big, actually. He should have left. Instead, he stepped fully into the room. Where are you from? He asked, surprising even himself. Cedar Ridge, Iowa. It's small. I know it, he replied. I'm from Bellevue. Not much bigger. Her brows lifted slightly in surprise, and he saw the wall between them crack just a little. His eyes drifted to her portfolio, worn and patched in places. It reminded him of the briefcase he had carried through college, held together by duct tape and hope. Architecture major. She nodded. Yes, sir. Iowa State. I know it's not Ivy League, but I worked hard to be here. Nathaniel crossed his arms, something shifting inside him. Prestige doesn't teach work ethic, he said. Her smile was like morning sunlight. Honest, bright, and filtered. Thank you, Mr. Cross. That means more than you know. As she turned to leave, he hesitated. Miss Bennett, he called out. She stopped. Report to my office tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. She blinked. Sir, I have a project that could benefit from fresh perspective. Claire nodded slowly, joy shining in her eyes. I won't let you down. He watched her go, something fragile and unfamiliar stirring inside him. For 3 years, Nathaniel Cross had built walls around his heart. But in that quiet room, with one wrong turn and a stolen moment, those walls began to crack, and the ice began to melt. The first rays of sunlight poured through the massive windows of the executive floor, painting the corridor in shades of gold and ivory. Claire Bennett stood before Nathaniel Cross's office door at precisely 7:29 a.m., her fingers clutching the leather strap of her bag, heart pounding like a drum in her chest. She had barely slept. After leaving the unexpected encounter the night before, she had spent hours revisiting her portfolio, cross-checking notes from orientation, and researching everything she could find on Cross and Whitmore's current architectural projects. She wanted to deado be ready. She took a deep breath and knocked once. Come in, a voice called from inside. Claire opened the door to find Nathaniel already at his desk, a charcoal suit stretched crisply over his broad shoulders. The city glimmered behind him like a living mural, and for a second, the room felt like something out of a dream. Miss Bennett, he said, not rising, but gesturing to the seat across from him. Punctual. I like that. Thank you, Mr. Cross. I have something I want you to look at, he continued, sliding a thick folder across the polished mahogany. The Madison Heights project. Luxury condominiums. High-value real estate. But it's been stuck in development limbo for 6 months. Claire opened the file. The blueprints were dense, beautiful, but flawed. Her trained eye immediately traced the building lines, noting how the natural lighting failed to align with the design's primary communal spaces. She flipped another page, then paused, running a finger along a foundational sketch. The light flows wrong, she said softly. The windows in the atrium catch minimal sunlight, and the parking structure area interferes with the foundational load-bearing walls. This angle's all wrong. Nathaniel leaned forward, the faintest glint of surprise flickering in his icy eyes. In 6 months, 3 firms failed to see that, he murmured. Claire blinked. I just noticed it now. It's the way the structure's laid out. It restricts expansion and airflow. What would you suggest? The next 2 hours passed in a blur. Claire flipped through the plans with sharp precision, sketching quick alternatives on blank pages, reconfiguring communal garden spaces, integrating structural improvements, and offering cost-effective alternatives with a confidence she hadn't even known she possessed. She talked about how light affects mental health, how children thrive in open spaces, how architecture should serve the people who inhabit it, not just impress those who fund it. Nathaniel watched her the entire time, and not just her hands, which moved with surety and grace, but her face. Her brown eyes lit up every time she found a new solution. Her voice grew animated when she described design as an act of love. You design with heart, he said quietly. Claire looked up, startled. Then she smiled a soft, vulnerable smile that wrapped around Nathaniel like warmth he hadn't felt in years. My dad used to say that buildings should be more than walls and roofs. They should make people feel safe, like they belong somewhere. Nathaniel's throat tightened. When had he last thought about people instead of profit margins? About belonging? Maybe never. The days that followed weren't like anything either of them expected. Nathaniel kept Claire close, always assigning her to his department's most delicate projects. Publicly, he justified it as mentorship. Privately, he just wanted her around. He told himself it was for the work, for the firm, for efficiency. It wasn't. Claire, for her part, worked harder than she'd ever worked in her life. She stayed late, eager to prove herself, always bringing her own insights and suggestions with thoughtful notes and revised sketches. She brought fresh energy to every project and carried herself with a kind of unshakable optimism. And somewhere between spreadsheets and site visits, they developed a rhythm. Nathaniel started looking forward to the mornings when Claire would appear with 2 cups of coffee, one black and one with cream and cinnamon, just how he liked it. At lunch, she sometimes brought sandwiches she had made at home. You're going to ruin me, he grumbled one afternoon, unwrapping a turkey and cranberry panini with roasted vegetables on homemade focaccia. It's called nutrition, Claire replied. You should try it sometime. He rolled his eyes, but inside, something was cracking open, something soft and terrifying and wonderful. One evening, they were working late again finalizing plans for a renovation project on the Upper East Side when Claire's phone rang. She glanced at it and immediately smiled. Hi, Dad, she answered, voice light and full of warmth. Nathaniel watched her speaker voice dipping into laughter as she asked about sanding techniques and wood grain polish. He could hear the affection and pride in her voice as she listened intently to her father's stories from the workshop back in Iowa. After she hung up, Nathaniel found himself asking, what's he working on? Claire beamed. He's building a porch for our neighbor, Mrs. Martin. She's 82 and wants to sit outside and watch her grandkids play. He's doing it at cost because she's on a fixed income. Nathaniel blinked. That's not very good business. Claire turned to him, thoughtful. No, but it's good humanity. The words struck him in the chest. That night, Nathaniel lay awake, staring at his ceiling, haunted by a thought he hadn't considered in years. What have I been building all this time? And who is it really for? That peaceful rhythm shattered one Friday morning. Ethan Ward, his longtime assistant and only real friend, knocked on his office door with fire in his eyes. She's back. Nathaniel didn't need to ask who. Victoria Lane, his ex-wife, the woman who had walked away with $50 million and his trust. What does she want now? She's claiming you hid assets. She's threatening to go public with stories about your emotional negligence and predatory behavior. Nathaniel felt cold rage spread in his veins. She's also mentioned Claire. He froze. What? She knows about her, or at least suspects something. She's not making direct threats yet, but she's planting seeds with tabloids and lawyers. If this goes public, Nathaniel closed his eyes. He could already see the headlines. Billionaire boss seduces naive intern. Cross scandal could topple empire. Claire didn't deserve to be caught in that hurricane. She deserved safety, freedom, respect, and his world had none of those things to offer her. That night, the office was quiet again. The two of them sat in Nathaniel's corner suite reviewing the blueprints for a new mixed-use property. Rain tapped against the windows. The power flickered, then finally shut off, leaving them in the soft, low glow of emergency lighting. "We should probably call it," Nathaniel said, though he made no move to stand. In a minute, Claire murmured, still sketching something in her notebook. Almost done. He watched her, his chest aching. Her presence filled the room in a way he couldn't explain. She looked up. Their eyes met. "Nathaniel," she whispered his first name on her lips for the first time. He stood and walked toward her. "This is a mistake," he said. "Then why does it feel like the only thing that's right?" She whispered back. And then she kissed him, or maybe he kissed her. He couldn't remember. All he knew was that the moment her lips touched his, everything he'd buried, loneliness, the hunger for connection, the longing came pouring out. It wasn't just passion. It was something far deeper, something healing. And for the first time in years, Nathaniel Cross felt alive. The morning after their first kiss, the city looked unchanged. But for Nathaniel Cross, everything felt different. He stood by the window of his office, holding a black coffee he hadn't tasted, watching the storm clouds gathering beyond the skyline. The same skyline that once filled him with certainty now looked like a horizon he couldn't read. The fortress he'd spent years building emotionally, professionally, was suddenly full of cracks. He turned as the door creaked open. Claire entered the office quietly. She wore a soft gray blouse tucked into a navy pencil skirt, her auburn hair falling in loose waves. Her steps were hesitant, uncertain, but when she looked at him, it was with that same unwavering honesty that had drawn him in from the start. "Good morning, Mr. Cross," she said, softly. He looked at her. "Miss Bennett." She flinched at the formality. He noticed. "We need to talk," she said, stepping further inside, closing the door behind her. He gestured toward the seat across from his desk, but she didn't take it. Instead, she moved to stand near the large bookshelf by the window, arms folded protectively across her chest. "About last night," she began. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. It was a mistake. Claire looked as though he had struck her. "I see. I'm your employer," he continued. "You're an intern." It was a lapse in judgment that should never have happened. She nodded, slowly, keeping her emotions carefully in check. "I understand." But she didn't move to leave. "Say what you came to say, Claire," he said, voice softer now. Her eyes met his, and for a second, the ache between them swelled in the silence. "Tell me it meant nothing," she whispered. "Look me in the eye and say it." Nathaniel opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His hands curled into fists at his sides. "I can't," he finally said. "You know I can't." Claire exhaled shakily, her eyes shimmering. "But that doesn't change the facts," he added. "People will twist this. Your name will be dragged through mud because of me. You'll lose everything you've worked for. I won't let that happen." Her voice broke then. "So what, Nathaniel? We pretend this never happened? We keep pretending we're just colleagues. It's the only way to protect you." She shook her head. "I don't want protection. I want truth." He stepped closer. His hand reached for hers, but paused halfway. "You're everything I never knew I needed," he said, raw honesty breaking through his usual stoicism. "But if being with me costs you your dreams, I'll never forgive myself." Claire stepped back, a single tear sliding down her cheek. "You don't get to decide what I'm willing to fight for," she whispered. "You're not the only one who's scared." And with that, she left. 2 days later, Claire opened the door to her apartment to find her father, George Bennett, standing on the threshold with a worn duffel bag slung over his shoulder and worry carved deep into his weathered face. "Dad," she gasped. "What thou did you?" "I saw the articles," he said gruffly. "The blogs, the rumors. I couldn't just sit in Cedar Ridge and hope you were okay." Claire's legs gave out, and she sat heavily on the couch. Her father followed, sitting beside her, taking her hand. "I swear none of it is true," she said. "Nathaniel hasn't done anything wrong. He's not like what they're saying." George stared at his dad, really looked at her, and what he saw wasn't naivety or recklessness. It was heartbreak and something deeper. "Love, I just want to make sure you're not being taken advantage of," he said finally. Claire shook her head. "He's not using me, Dad. He's pushing me away to protect me. And is that what you want?" She swallowed. "No." George exhaled. "Then you better help him find the courage he's clearly lacking." Across and Whitmore, tension simmered just below the surface. Nathaniel had thrown himself into work with brutal precision: meetings, press statements, financial audits, anything to dull the memory of Claire's touch, her voice, the weight of her eyes pleading with him to choose love over fear. But everywhere he turned, she was there. Not physically. She asked for temporary reassignment to the London office, bit in echoes. Her sketches still lay scattered on his desk. The coffee mug she brought him sat untouched. Even the plant she'd insisted on just a little green to make the room feel alive mocked him with its resilience. Ethan Ward watched his friend implode in silence for days before speaking. "You're being an idiot," he said bluntly. Nathaniel didn't look up. "Not now, Ethan. No, especially now." He walked into the office and dropped a folder on the desk. "These are the press leaks. You should know Victory is going to the Meteor. She's already spinning the story into something sordid." "I know," Nathaniel muttered. Ethan leaned in. "She's going to ruin Claire." Nathaniel went still. "She'll lose credibility, maybe her entire career, all because you're too afraid to fight for the one person who actually gives a damn about you." The silence was deafening. "I'm protecting her." "No," Ethan said. "You're destroying both of you." That evening, Nathaniel returned to his penthouse and found Lucia Romero, his longtime housekeeper, waiting for him with a steaming cup of chamomile tea in a look he knew better than to ignore. "You look hollow," she said in her soft Spanish accent. "I'm fine." She gave him a pointed look. "You haven't eaten in 2 days. You haven't slept. You lost the light in your eyes again." Nathaniel exhaled. "I had to let her go, Lucia. It's the only way to protect her." She placed the tea on the table and folded her arms. "No, it's the only way to protect yourself from pain." He didn't reply. "I've watched you for years. Silent, cold, empty. Then this girl shows up, and suddenly you're smiling. You're eating real food. You're laughing." Lucia stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "She gave you life again, Nathaniel. Don't let fear steal that away." Monday morning dawned gray and quiet. Claire stood in Nathaniel's office, her single suitcase beside her, ready for her transfer to London. Her eyes were red, but her chin was lifted high. She wasn't going to beg. Not again. Nathaniel sat behind his desk, pretending to read a report. "The car's waiting downstairs," he said, voice flat. "Look at me," Claire demanded. He didn't move. "Look at me, Nathaniel." Slowly, he turned. Their eyes met. "You love me," she said. "I know you do. I can see it in your face." "Love isn't enough," he whispered. "No, it's everything. It's the only real thing in this world of numbers and deals and cold silence." Before he could respond, the door burst open. Victoria Lane stormed in, her high heels clacking against the floor, her platinum hair perfect, her smile venomous. "How romantic," she drawled. "The billionaire and his little pet intern." "Get out," Nathaniel said, rising to his full height. "Oh, I don't think so," she sneered. "Not until we renegotiate the terms of our divorce. You know, to account for your improprieties. You blackmail me, and I'll bury you," he growled. Victoria laughed. "Try it. I have lawyers. I have journalists. I have influence." Nathaniel's jaw clenched. Claire reached for his hand, and the touch of her fingers grounded him. Her strength flowed into him like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. He turned to Victoria. "You want a war?" he said coldly. "You'll get one. But this time, I'm not fighting alone." The press conference was called within 2 hours. The city's media alert reporters, photographers, Columnists from the New York Post and national news stations filled the grand atrium of Cross and Whitmore's corporate headquarters. They came expecting scandal, a strategic statement, or perhaps the unveiling of another ironclad legal defense. They did not expect what actually happened. Nathaniel Cross stood at the podium, sharp in his navy suit. But the steel in his gaze had been tempered by something new, something warmer, something true. Claire stood beside him, her hand wrapped gently in his. "This will be brief," Nathaniel began, his voice strong and calm, echoing off the marble walls. "There have been rumors regarding my relationship with Miss Claire Bennett, one of her architecture interns. Rather than allow speculation to dictate the truth, I've decided to speak plainly." The room leaned in, cameras clicked, pens froze. "I am in love with her." A hush swept across the whole like a sudden wind. "I did not plan for it," he continued. "I did not expect it. But the heart rarely follows spreadsheets or calendars. Miss Bennett is brilliant, ethical, talented, and more dedicated than most people I've ever met in this industry." He looked at Claire then, and she looked back, her eyes full of tears and something stronger than pride and conviction. "She did not seduce me. She did not seek this. What we have is real, and I refuse to let the truth be warped by greed or gossip." One camera shutter snapped, then another, then an avalanche. If any outlet attempts to slander her name or reduce our story to tabloid fodder, Nathaniel concluded, know that I will meet it with the full force of my legal team, and I will not apologize for loving someone extraordinary. He stepped away from the podium, gently guiding Claire with him as flashes lit up the atrium like a thunderstorm. The press momentarily stunned found themselves without their villain. There was no stumble, no scandal, no damage control. Instead, there was a powerful man doing something rare, telling the truth. And in doing so, he disarmed them all. Across town, in a sleek penthouse where wine never aged past its label and loyalty never lasted longer than a quarterly gain, Victoria Lane watched the press conference on a flat-screen television. She sipped from her glass of red wine, expecting Nathaniel to crack under pressure. But he didn't. Instead, he dismantled her carefully crafted trap with the most potent weapon of authenticity. By choosing transparency, he had robbed her of power. The headlines that emerged over the next 24 hours were not about manipulation or misconduct, but about redemption. Cold CEO finds light in love. Cross stuns public with bold declaration of affection for intern. Not scandalo love story. Victoria threw her glass at the wall. It shattered. Her reign over his reputation was over. The wedding took place 3 months later, but not in Manhattan, not in Paris, not even at one of the family estates Nathaniel had inherited from old money relatives. It was held in Cedar Ridge, Iowa, inside a modest white church with a creaky wooden steeple and warm pews that had held generations of small-town stories. The church where Claire had been baptized, where she had grown up singing hymns next to her father. Nathaniel stood at the altar in a tailored navy suit, flanked by Ethan Ward, his best man. Across from him, Claire walked down the aisle on the arm of George Bennett, her father, who beamed through misty eyes. He reached the altar and looked at Nathaniel with quiet gravity. "Take care of my girl," he said softly. "With my life," Nathaniel replied, voice thick with emotion. The ceremony was simply no celebrity guest list, no lavish floral arrangements, just love, real, unvarnished, sacred. Claire's dress was made by hand ivory lace, delicate but strong, much like the woman wearing it. When they exchanged vows, they didn't speak loudly, but the conviction in their voices rang louder than any orchestra. "You saved me," Nathaniel whispered. "No," Claire replied, as brimming with tears. "We saved each other." When they kissed, the townspeople cheered, and somewhere at the back of the chapel, Lucia Romero dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief. She had flown in from New York, dressed in her Sunday best, smiling proudly. The girl who had brought life back to Nathaniel Cross had now given it permanence. And outside, under the warm June sky, the townspeople lit sparklers and danced barefoot in the grass, celebrating not just a union but a miracle. The office Nathaniel once ruled with an iron heart now looked nothing like it had in the days of cold power and sterile minimalism. Framed crayon drawings hung where abstract art once lived. Photos of Claire and the twins Robert and Rose decorated the bookshelf beside architectural awards and trade journals. A Lego model of a bridge, partially completed, set next to blueprints for a green housing project in Harlem. Claire stood at the conference table sketching revisions for her firm, Foundations, which specialized in affordable housing and community-first design. She had launched it 3 years ago with Nathaniel as its first investor and biggest supporter. Across the room, Nathaniel held their 3-year-old daughter, Rose, on his lap. "Daddy, look what I made," she chirped, holding up a paper with colorful stick figures. To adults, to kids, one garden. He kissed her forehead. "It's perfect." Their son, Robert, sat cross-legged on the floor playing with toy blocks, his face scrunched in concentration. When he managed to stack them into a small tower, he grinned. Nathaniel grinned back. In this roomance a place of business, now a sanctuary, had found everything he once believed he didn't deserve: family, peace, joy. That evening, they sat on the deck behind their country home in upstate New York. The sunset stretched across the sky in golds and oranges, the air full of laughter and the smell of fresh grass. Claire curled beside him on the porch swing, barefoot, her head resting on his shoulder. "Any regrets?" she asked softly. Nathaniel looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "Just one." She tensed slightly. "What's that?" He smiled. "That I didn't open that wrong door sooner." Claire chuckled, her eyes gleaming. "Me too." They sat in silence as the sun dipped below the hills, their children playing in the yard, their hearts full. Once, Nathaniel Cross believed wealth was measured in billions. Now, he understood, true riches were a child's laughter, a hand to hold, and a love that defied every expectation. And to think it all began with a wrong door and the courage to step through it.